everyone.
Hello, well, welcome to our second Facebook Live. I'm very excited. Today is our first time doing it in English.
Yes, me too. And yeah, welcome to this Career Center Education channel.
For those who are here just the first time, we welcome you if you're a UST student. We also welcome you if you're not a UST student, you're from other institutions in Hong Kong. We also welcome you. Or you might be just anybody who is also in college or maybe an employer just interested in tuning in. We also welcome you here with us today. And so our comment session is open. So if you have any questions or you have any comments on what we just talked or what we are talking about, or if you have questions you want us to answer, we'll be happy to answer that. So please type the comments into the comment box.
Yeah, feel free to plug in, and we are here to address your concerns.
So So this week, I think it's, we've been talking a lot about further studies at HKUST. And so we just finished a few of the sessions with lots and lots of questions from a lot of students inquiring and asking about pursuing further study opportunities after UST this year.
Wow. So what are the highlights?
Well, the highlights. Well, one thing I think with the pandemic situation going on, definitely, I think there are more students thinking about looking for graduate studies opportunities. One way I think what they're thinking in their heads is they're thinking about sort of waiting it out for the pandemic. A lot of it has to do with, they're not sure if how long the pandemic is going to last. They felt that if they go to study, they could wait out the market a little bit so that they could emerge from a more favorable job market. So I hear that a lot from the students.
Me too, from many of our advising section students always ask about the plan of further study, or is it good to take a gap year? So what could be done differently instead of just jumping into the job market immediately after they graduate.
So one of the things, I often think, one of my principles, I often think there's a cost to everything. So there's a cost. Obviously, some of the graduating students might be thinking, right now the market perhaps is not as great as the previous 2 years, and so they're thinking about waiting it out. But then nobody also knows whether waiting it out would be better.
And defer the problem.
Right. Deferring the problem, but also not sure whether, it will get better, right? Would it be worse after 1 year or 2 years? So and then I also hear sometimes some students saying that it's always okay to get more education, right? It's always okay that I get more degrees and it does more good than harm.
Okay, so from HR perspective, my name is Grace. So this is Grace from HR perspective. Have you ever considered at some point you are overqualified for something? And too many degrees, too many qualifications. It's not bad, but it's bad without focus, if you ask me. Just keep studying whatever you can, and I've seen a real case is that a student, a graduate, came here and he's around 30 years old, but he hasn't worked for a long time in his life, and he's now desperately he needs a job. So to me, well, good and bad is not always overqualified is not always something that might benefit to your future.
So there's always so I agree completely. I think there's always overqualification. So and there's a price that you're paying if you are doing more further studies. So but then again, it works for some people depending on why you're doing it. And I think what we're hearing from a lot of students is they want to pursue further studies because the additional qualification would help them open doors for some opportunities. So then it becomes, what are the opportunities that you're thinking about, right? So a lot of our students thinking about doing academia, doing advanced research opportunities. And yes, those opportunities do require the master's degree, MPhil, or PhD. So if that's what you're thinking about, by all means, I think that's the right thing to do. But if that's not what you're thinking about, then I do think that there's a price that you're paying for spending the extra year in school the time, the cost involved, and also when you step out of the market that, you know, you're 1 year older, perhaps not exactly 1 year wiser, and then
you ask for 3K more.
and then you ask for more, you're expecting more money, and then the employer would also think, oh, you know, would this person have high expectation that I cannot meet? And so there is some barriers too, I think. So you need to think carefully. I'm not advocating either way because every person's situation is different. But definitely it's something that, you know, you need to think through quite well. Yes.
Shall we pick some questions?
Yeah, so I was doing a bunch of sessions. I just finished one at 5:30, and there's a lot of questions about reference letters. And I think when applying to graduate programs, one of the things that usually get asked is getting recommendations. And interestingly, the struggle is a lot of students struggle is the professors don't know me. And it's challenging, right? So if the professors don't know you, then how can they write a good recommendation letter? So, you know, my suggestion to students is, first of all, have the professors know you. And knowing you can be, outside the classroom ideally, and not just something like, oh, he got an A+ in my class, and he did, you know, all his problem sets were great. I think that's not a good recommendation letter. In general, a good recommendation letter usually comes from a faculty member who works with you outside of the classroom. It could be undergraduate research opportunity. It could be example would be like Robocon. The UST is very big on Robocon. It could be also some faculty advisor in clubs and associations. I think that's common. Or your FYP, your final year project, or your capstone project. I think those faculty advisors are usually good candidates for recommendation because not only can they comment on your intellectual ability in a subject matter, but they can also comment on you working independently, you know, as a researcher or as somebody who's leading a team, working with other people, etc.
And it's very important to pick someone who know you well, because apart from the letter, I've been invited, you know, for so many times that I need to write a letter for you into the other university system and answer some to rate you according to their standard. So it's not the letter and that's it. We still need to do extra work. So invite someone who knows you well. You know, you have built trust and good relations throughout your journey. Will be way better than someone. You earn an A+, but the professor may not know you well.
So interesting. So one of the questions that came in is, what if you're applying in a year or two and maybe your faculty would have forgotten about you? That comes up a lot too, okay? So one of the things that I would recommend you to do is to start connecting with him or her right now. So have that discussion with your faculty right now, telling them, hey, I'm interested in pursuing, master in something, and so, but not right now, but I might do that in a year or two. Okay? Well, and guess what? You want to drop in check-in emails every now and then. I mean, in the old days, it would be the yearly Christmas cards. Okay? It would also be, some sort of just coffee chats, whatever. So what I recommend you to do, if you're still in your final year and you already kind of know who you want to be asking the recommendation letter, set up that meeting with him or her, tell them about your plans, and then after that, occasional check-ins, so check-in emails and things like, hey, tell your faculty about your job that you're in, what kind of projects you're working on, or perhaps if you're local, drop by UST and have coffee with the faculty member every now and then. And then, of course, the Christmas cards and the greetings, that is also very important for him to remember who you are.
To me, it's like a Christmas card for every 3 months. Like we'll check in with some industry updates and have an opinion, ask for perspectives. Yes, that's a professional way to keep the relations warm. Yes, instead of, oh, I hope you remember me and this is my photo and have something urgent and ask for help.
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, I often say, recommendation letter for faculty members, it's really not part of their day job, but it's kind of part of their job. So they know that there's something that they can do with students. They don't have to do it, but it's something that they can do. So you want, and also, I don't think any faculty member would want you to approach them just because you want that letter. Right? They actually, they're here in university because they want to work with students, they want to educate, right? So you want to build that relationship, and it should be quite usual. And I can tell you, a lot of my faculty friends, they tell me how excited they are when they receive that check-in email from their former students telling them where they're up to. Grace can probably talk a lot about that.
I've got an offer. Yes, this fall, it really makes me feel like getting home every time.
Yeah. So invest in that, and don't make it feel like you're just doing that because you're asking for the letter. Do that because you value that relationship, and then the recommendation letter is something that would just come really naturally. So that's something I think a lot of UST students really need to work on. And it's not uncommon. I get a lot of students in year 4 who come to me and say, "I spent 4 years and nobody knows me." And that is, that is pretty sad. Okay. And so try to invest in those relationships. Now, another thing is, sometimes I know in some majors, classes are very big. And so sometimes it might be hard for the faculty member to know you personally very well. So it's okay if the recommendation comes from your language instructor, or perhaps smaller classes, or the career building course. It's also okay. Okay. The most important thing is not about the title of the faculty who's writing it, but it's writing how well that person knows you. So you don't feel like you always have to go to the department head or go to the president, the vice president, because they have a fancy title. I don't think that matters. Yeah.
And you need to be proactive to invest in the relationship, I would say. So there are two types of reference letters I normally produce. I'm going to reveal a secret. And I seldom say no, but if the reference letter is less than 150 words, to me is I don't know you well. This is a secret message. If I know you well enough, the reference letter will be around 300 words, or almost a full A4 page. So now you know that there are secret codes. Despite it's a letter, it's not bad, but the length, the content, the stories that I can tell, it pretty much depends on our encounters, and maybe your attitude really impressed me. When you are searching for jobs and your preparation, whatever. Yes, those are the contents that the next professor maybe they want to know. And one more thing is your learning style. Yeah, that's very important. Your in particular, say for example, your behavior in class. Are you a learner who really enjoys being lectured, or are you a learner, or I enjoy experiential learning? So those are some hints for me to write up a good reference letter for you.
Another thing that I'll often ask my students to do, if you ask somebody to write a recommendation letter, sometimes that person might not know how he can really help you. Having said that, don't offer to your faculty members, say, "Hey, do you want a draft? I can draft it for you." Okay. So I've had students who go to the faculty and say, "Can you write a recommendation?" "Oh, do you need my help? I can draft it for you." That's not a very good idea. Now, but having said that, sometimes the faculty member might not have as much detailed information on what you have done than you do. Obviously, you know much more than he does, right? So sometimes in that case, you could provide something called like a data sheet. So it's like, okay, Professor Chan, I would like you to write about my undergraduate research experience, and in your lab, I have done this and this and this. Now, perhaps he might know the result, but might not know exactly all the details that you have done. So it's okay to provide more data, numbers, like a data sheet, so that he can take that data sheet and plug it in as he sees fit. But definitely not writing a draft for him. And also not just say, "Can you write it for me?" and just kind of leave it out in the vacuum and let him do everything. Because for him, he's not going to have all the data. So when he doesn't have the data, even though he wants to do a good job, he can't. And so he's going to write a very generic 150 word letter because that's all he has on his hands.
So what I'm hearing is you need to prepare a cheat sheet.
Yes, basically.
For your boss or your supervisor, and provide sufficient details for that. But in the job context, it's perfectly fine to write for your supervisor with his or her permission. So in some job like relations, it's fine. But in in the academia, in that context, when you ask for, when the target is professor, you need to be mindful of it.
And another common question on recommendation letter is who you can ask, and does it have to come from a professor? So generally, I think for most of the postgraduate programs, you need at least 2 to 3 recommendations, and at least one should come from a faculty, an instructor, or teacher that is in an academic setting, because you want that person to comment on your academic ability. Now, if there's more that's required, then that's when sometimes you can ask your summer internship supervisor, or perhaps a basketball coach if you are in a team captain, to comment on other personal qualities that would be relevant to your postgraduate study. Yeah, so that's something you want to be paying attention on who do you want to pick. And so what I find is that, having nobody to pick is usually a common problem, or the person, I've known that person a long time, he doesn't remember me, that is a problem. Those are the common problems that I
Too urgent, also not good.
Yes, you want to give them enough time. Give them enough time. Don't rush them. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So my recommendation for students usually, so a lot of the deadlines are in December, January, right? So my recommendation is you should have most of everything ready by Halloween, so around end of October, and then you should actually sit down with the faculty to talk about your plans, because they also want to be part of your plan, right? Because they're here to help you, and so sit down with the person, with the faculty member, go through your plans. Tell him or her who else you're asking recommendations for, right? So, for example, if I'm a faculty member who's done research with you, and you tell me, oh, I'm also going to ask recommendations from the basketball coach, then chances are he doesn't need to comment so much on teamwork and leadership because someone else is already doing it. So the few recommendations, they should work together. They should work in complementary to each other, but not contradictory to each other. And that way you can paint a complete picture of who you are. So it's kind of like each piece of recommendation is like one piece in the puzzle. And then eventually the whole piece of puzzle will show who you really are.
Yeah, that's very important. And is it wise to talk about the career aspirations with the faculty member?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, it's good to open up and just share your plans with them. Because that's also how he can help you. Because he knows, example would be, I'm very interested in advanced research. Okay, well then he's probably going to note that in the way how he writes, right? So definitely, as much as possible, as possible, share your plans with them honestly and openly. I think that's really going to help. Let's see.
Any more questions coming?
Let me see. I think we have another very, very common question is changing field. So if you major in something, one subject undergraduate, do you always have to do advanced degree in that subject, or can you do other subjects? The answer basically is yes, you can basically do anything if you have the right skill sets for it. So very common. We have a lot of science students who might be thinking about getting more vocational relevant type subjects, for example, from biology to fintech, or some of them might go from like chemistry to like healthcare related subjects. And so, yes, definitely you can do that. Just be mindful, a lot of the master degree have requirements on your language ability and also your mathematical ability. So you don't need to be a math major, but you need to have taken some math and can probably do calculus before you start some program. So they will list it out, and as long as you can fulfill it, it's probably okay. Yeah. So that's also very common, and I think actually in Hong Kong there's a lot of students who want to pursue a different major in a master as a way of transitioning to a different field altogether in their job.
And you may need to check in whether some kind of solid work experience is required before taking the master's degree. For some programs, it may require you to have solid work experience, like a full-time job for 1 or 2 years, with people-related jobs. before you study, say, for example, master's in counseling. So those are some prerequisites that you need to take note of instead of just to assume you can, just jump from bachelor's degree to a master's degree direct without, without any other add-on.
Yes, and for USC students, one of the very common postgraduate programs I think a lot of them like to do, especially in science school, because I just came back from a session there, is the PGDE in Hong Kong to become a teacher. And there are two ways to do it. You can either do it 1 year full time, or you can do it 2 year part time. Yes, and so there's pros and cons of each. In general, of course, if you could already get a job in a school, then it's always better to do part-time, because I think the teaching experience would also be very relevant. Yeah. Because you might also get stuck if you do it full-time, and then you come out and you cannot get a teaching job.
Yeah, because it seems there's no U-turn for
yes.
teaching. Yeah, how can you explain, apply for a management trainee after getting PGDE may not make sense to most employers.
Yeah. So, so another thing I think that came up quite a lot on further studies would be to apply to overseas universities as a way to potentially find employment there afterwards. And so we hear that a lot. And so, let's look at some of the let's look at some of the reasons of going overseas, because we did a poll about students. We found it quite interesting.
Yes. So what programs are you interested in, for further studies? Well, more than 70% of the audience vote for MSc or MA, that kind of thought-based program. It makes sense?
Yeah, so mostly thinking about as a way to, open up career opportunities. I think most people are thinking about that.
In the world. And while around 94% of the audience prefer full-time, again, makes sense, the whole story. And location-wise, wow, let's name 3 big countries that are, most preferred in that polling. The first one is UK, around 70%, and followed by United States, 62%, and we have around 40% of the audience vote for Canada. Not bad. And we have some students, around 60% of you guys prefer to pursue further studies in Hong Kong, which is not bad, maybe just to defer the problem a bit. And you prefer urban area, pursue the study versus suburban. So yeah, makes sense. And when would you want to start? Well, many of them, you all plan to start right after undergraduate graduation. So very urgent.
Yeah, I think that, a lot of our students that I've talked to are more interested to go right away, because they felt it's more like an extension of the undergraduate education. Yeah, absolutely can understand that.
And what are the main reasons why you would want to pursue further studies? So some highlights here: help me open career options, as we have talked about it, and earn more money in the future, yes or no, maybe. And what else? Pursue more advanced knowledge in an academic subject I love. Well, this one also makes sense. And
and then I think we also have a lot talking about they want to change fields, or they want to move somewhere else, and want to have sort of other experiences, educational experiences on their CV. For me personally, I actually find that, I do advocate anybody, as a matter of fact, to go to see the world, because I think it's living in a different country or place where you grow up. I think definitely is a very eye-opening experience, and it's a great learning experience when you're young. So definitely, I would advocate spending some time in a different place, and it doesn't matter where, but just somewhere different, because I think it's going to be quite a good learning experience. And obviously, when we talk to students, the key locations that come up often outside of Hong Kong is one of them, but we also hear that there's a lot of interest in UK, in US, and Australia and Canada. Yeah. So which makes sense. And then followed by actually Germany, Switzerland, and Taiwan came up on the list. So I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah.
And what are some other interesting reasons?
So some of the reasons, sometimes some reasons is I kind of don't know what I want to do, so I just stay in school and hide in school as long as I can. Do you recommend that?
No, I don't think it's a good option to hide in a cave. The best way to learn the experience is just to flow yourself out to the work world, and and after 2 years or so, maybe you have narrowed down what you like. Then after that 2-3 years, you're still below 30, and then you apply for a part-time or full-time master's degree. Focus on that area. That makes more sense because that qualification may help you to promote. And no offense if you just do big data now. Maybe after 2 years, I find big data not very interesting. And that master's degree was here on your CV, and you maybe could explain, and you may compare with your peer. You have 2 years experience less, and you might feel frustrated at that point.
Yeah. So one of the things that I find is that I personally I did more education beyond undergraduate, both right after and also worked a few years. And I think there's definitely a difference in terms of how much you value that education when you kind of just did it right after undergraduate, as opposed to have worked a few years. You kind of know what you're missing, and then you would then focus more on what is more relevant and useful for you. So I would definitely recommend, if you don't know, don't just dive into it thinking there's nothing to lose, because it's not exactly true. Okay. There's also a question on, if you're a science and engineering student, do you have to do master? No, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to. There are some jobs that just require it. That's true. Okay. So I think in science and engineering, in some fields, more advanced roles, more advanced technical roles, they do require a postgraduate degree, but definitely not for all the roles, especially in Hong Kong. Yes.
And one quick answer to this question: can I find my secondary school teacher for the reference letter? I think it's fine. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, although the secondary school teacher, well, I hope you've kept in touch with him throughout the years, that he or she continues to know you well and know sort of where you're at and what your plans are. It's okay. It's not as ideal. I don't think it's as ideal.
Acceptable.
Yeah, it's all right. If need be, yes. Yeah. So I guess one of the another thing I think people often think about is sort of where do they want to go, and so there are definitely many factors to consider. And so one thing students often do is they come to us with like a rankings list. So basically they give us the whole league table and say, I'm going to apply to every one of them. So rankings is not the only thing you should be looking at. There's so many factors you need to consider when you're thinking about where to go. And so right now, I think a lot of people are thinking about, going someplace else, to, moving someplace else for work afterwards. And if so, then you should also pay attention to, immigration policies, the work permit policies, because we're seeing that's changing like every day, every few days.
So the local job market, I think.
Yes.
What talents are they looking for, in elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, so there are some fields that are more sought after in certain countries than others, and so that might also be a guideline for you to think about what fields you want to get into after graduation and where. And so, because it's so specific to different countries, so it's very hard to say, this is better than the other, because it really depends on what you are looking for as well. Yeah.
And we welcome students to come to us for one-on-one.
Yes.
Because, you are all very unique individual case, and you have your own background, your own story, and different situations.
Yeah, but I can tell you this is a very hot topic. Yeah. It's an extremely hot topic right now on campus. Almost everybody who comes to us are asking about that. There's a lot of anxiety going around, and like it or not, it's happening, and we're still working through it. But I'm generally an optimist. Are you optimistic? I'm generally an optimist. So life finds a way, and we can probably find a way that works. And I'm actually quite quite optimistic. You too?
Yeah. I think there's always a way out.
Oh, can graduates come to us still? Okay, so yes, graduates can come to us still. Good question. So yes, I know some of you already graduated, maybe in June for 2020 or earlier. Yes, you're welcome to come to us. We also work with alumni, but don't tell everybody about it because we can't serve possibly all the alumni, but we can help you. Okay, since you're tuning here, so yeah, we'll help you.
Proactive attitude, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a student, year 3 chemistry, who wants to do further studies in environmental science. But my GPA doesn't fulfill UROP requirements. Can I find some part-time lab jobs to earn working experience or focusing on studying? So I'm assuming the further studies you want to do in environmental science is research related. Okay, if it is, so which is if it's in Hong Kong, it's like MPhil type research related, then I think any type of exposure in the research environment would help. It could also be an FYP next year, because you'll be doing FYP next year. So that could also mimic like a research environment too. However, if you're not thinking about a research-based program like MPhil or PhD, but you're thinking more like a taught-based MSc in environmental science, then I don't think that UROP experience is that important. What do you think?
Yes, I agree, because for the top program, it's not the focus is not too much on the research ability. I mean, top program is like more application, more on the how to apply that wisdom, that knowledge into the business environment. It's more like that kind of acumen and skills. It's not too much about the research.
Yeah, so actually, if you are thinking about a taught-based program, like a Master of Science in Environmental Science, and then thinking about, okay, next is I want to go get a job after the master degree, then probably if you're year 3, what you'd be thinking about is getting an internship this summer that is related to environmental science. I think that's probably going to help you much more for your master's application, because it can also substantiate your interest in your application process. But if you're thinking about, research path, an MPhil, PhD path, then probably something more research related would be more relevant. So I hope I answered your questions, but that's great. Yeah. So we have a lot of students in chemistry also thinking about green careers in the future as well. Yeah, and so graduates can come too. Yes. I think this year we're seeing a lot of graduates, especially from 2020, June 2020, who are still looking. And so if you're one of them, yes, you can email us and we can set something up. I think you can actually also try to find us. Not sure if we're still doing that by email, but you can probably go to Facebook and email our text us, message us on Facebook, and we can probably set something up with you. We're happy to help. We're here to help. All right.
Okay, so that's all for today.
That's all for today. We'll be back next week at 6 o'clock. So sending your questions on IG, on Facebook, or email us your questions if you want. And we don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Stay tuned.
Depends on the questions.
Yeah. So any questions you have, send it in, and we'll see you next week.
At Cantonese, is it?
Yes. Next week we'll be Cantonese. We'll do Cantonese next week, and then we'll switch.
Kind of alternative. Let's see how things go.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah. We're always, I change every day, so I'm very flexible. All right. Yes, miss you guys. I miss you guys too, all the graduates who work with. We really miss you, and we really want to continue to help you. Okay? Well, thank you so much. Tune in next week at 6 o'clock. Bye-bye.